Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to Enforcing the Fundamentals with Doug Harding. I am Matt. With me, as always, is Doug because the show is named after him. And we have a special guest this week. Going back to that 1980-81 Cowichan Valley team, we have Mr. Danny Hodgson with us. Danny, how are you?
I'm doing great, Matt. Good to talk to you guys. Good to be here.
I really appreciate you joining. I've had a really good response from some of the guys you used to play with back in the day on coming on and joining us here. Now, just looking at your stats and having had a discussion with you in our pre-show, you came out of Fort Mac, Alberta. How did you end up in Cowichan Valley?
Well, I ended up in Cowichan Valley because the Spokane Flyers at the time, that was their Tier 2 affiliate. And a bunch of us from Western Canada who were on that list ended up in Cowichan Valley with your father.
Okay, Dad, did you have any say over that? How did that work from working with Spokane? Because up until today, this is the first I'm hearing about it. We talked in a previous episode about you guys were sort of the home rink for the Canucks training camp this year. This is the first I'm hearing about the affiliate with Spokane. So how did that work?
Well, actually, as far as the players that they sent me some phenomenal young hockey players. And I had joined the team late. The fellow that originally was supposed to be working with the team had been released and let go, but he originally set up the affiliation. But what it came down to is I talked to a scout of theirs. His name was Bruce Harrelson. And, I knew Bruce was from Edmonton. And he knew Danny from minor hockey. And he assured me that we were going to get 4 or 5 really good young hockey players. He wanted to carry 6 young hockey players and 4 other late older players originally with as part of our affiliation to carry the group. And that was 10 players, and that was a lot in consideration that we wanted as many Vancouver Island kids as we could. But Bruce called me just before he sent everybody out. And he said, I know you're getting this late. I didn't get a chance to go to their camp to see the players. But Billy had. I'm sorry, Billy. I can't remember Billy's last name. Danny, do you remember Bill's last name?
No, actually, I don't.
Yeah.
I see his face, so.
He did. He was a great kid. Um, Everybody's a kid to me now that I'm old. But we got. They wanted 10 players to come, and he said that he mentioned 4 specific players. He mentioned Danny and Dean and Rick Nasham and Nisham and Glenn Kolka. Those are the 4 young kids. He said, you got to keep them. And I said, we'll take a look at them. He said, they're talented. Oh, I said, if they've got talent, I can work with that. I'm quite happy to open my door and do this. And sure enough, they showed up, and they had another 4 or 5 players that came from there that were basically junior B kids from the lower mainland. I think Scott Sparkman was another one of those. But the guy that I really built almost a really long-term relationship out of that whole thing was Bruce Harrelson. He had a really keen sense of what a hockey player was and what a hockey player wasn't. He was a scout for both 2 NHL teams. The last one was Detroit. I think the other one that he was with Hartford. But he gave me what I thought was a little unbelievable accounting of what he thought the potential in specifically those 4 hockey players would be. And I went, okay, well, we'll see. We're going to take them, and I will keep those 4, but I'm not guaranteeing anything on the other kids that you were going to come. He said, well, no, we have a written agreement. I said, well, you didn't have it with me, but I hope that it will all work out. Well, they sent me Danny, and Dean came in a day or so after that, and Glenn came in, and Rick Nisham all came in within a couple of days into Cowichan, and I was flabbergasted.
Hmm.
I have never seen as much young talent. I mean, really young, but talent enough to play because we were a little bit older team as far as carrying some kids that have played a couple of years junior B. But to carry Danny at 15 and Dean at 16 and Glenn Galton at 16 and Rick Nasham, I think, was also 16. Rick might have been 17, but
17 is what I have on my list here.
17.
So when I, for the record, so everybody knows, so
Yeah,
everybody knows,
good
I am
boy.
looking at hockeydatabase.com for my stats. And this is a website that's recording stats from before the internet. So I will take your personal words for this over anything I have to say online. However, what this says to me right here is Rick was 17. Rick was actually described to me by a friend at the University of Regina as Regina hockey legend Rick Nasham. So clearly he did some decent things. I mean, Dean has had a career that speaks for itself, and Glenn went on to be a multi-sport athlete. So obviously there was some talent in these four kids.
Yeah, the big thing is that I was told that Danny Hodgson was going to replace Wayne Gretzky. This is how
Ooh,
good this kid is. And
wow.
I looked and I thought, oh my God, he could. I've met Wayne. Uh, I was pretty good friends with his junior hockey coach. So, but his ability to read everything that's going on around him and produce a play where most people will panic themselves into losing or turning over a puck. His ability not to let the people who discovered his talent and wanted to run him into next year to avoid them. Uh,
Mhm.
he had an uncanny sense of how to play the game as a 15-year-old. And I'm going, oh my God, where could this go to? So I was pretty impressed. I'm looking. I have these four kids. I have three or four kids from Victoria who are I thought would be impressive kids in terms of their talent and abilities. I mean, we really cleaned the Junior B League out for what was their top players, and then some Cowichan Valley kids, like Len Myers and we it was just I'm going, this is an outstanding group, but these four players bring all of the possible skills at an extremely high level to the combination of what this team could be. So and Danny was amazing. Danny could go behind the net and all the bullies would try to pick on him, and Danny come out with a puck and feed it off. And Jeff at that time just liked to shoot pucks in the net, was there to do his thing, shoot pucks in the net. And they were
Yeah.
they were fantastic to work with. Mind you, you had to raise your voice sometimes because sometimes younger kids don't hear quite as well as they should. But they were great. They were absolutely awesome. And they learned and they developed and they performed. And, I have to say, Bruce Harrelson went on to scout uh, for the Kamloops Blazers. Actually, he got me an interview going into my third year with the Kamloops Blazers. And I did the interview for the head coach because Cowichan, all my kids that I loved the best were all going to be gone. And
Mhm.
and Cowichan was a struggle to pay. I mean, there were months and months that we would go without getting a paycheck from Cowichan.
Yeah.
And it was just a bunch 10 friends who got together to put some money into a pot, and then before they ever got to open, somebody had basically spent it all on them. So it was a tough situation. But Danny didn't know this, but Mel Bridgman's dad used to drive the bus for us. You remember that old Prevost bus the first year?
Yeah.
The old guy driving it was Mel Bridgman's dad.
How come I didn't know that?
I don't know. I don't think you know who Mel Bridgman was, but Mel was the first kid I ever worked with that was drafted into the NHL, and he was drafted #1 overall. So, geez,
Oh
I don't know
wow!
how I did that, but I did that pretty good. And
Right now,
Fraser was there too. So,
you said a couple of things, and I saw Danny's face when you said the one thing. So I want to really ask him about this. You just got compared to Wayne Gretzky. How does that sit with you? And had you heard that up before today?
No, I never heard that one before.
oh, you got to have heard that at 15. Everybody,
No.
this kid is. We haven't seen a talent like that since Wayne Gretzky.
Holy moly. I must have been doing something else then and not listening.
Well, I currently have the
Again.
stats pulled up. So, do you remember by any chance your stats from that year, or do you want me to read them to you?
Let me guess.
Go.
56 games?
It says your games played was 48, and when I look at it, it looks like
48.
you played a couple in Spokane that year too.
I think just 2 in Spokane. So let's see, 48 games. Maybe, I don't know, 40 goals and 70 assists or something.
You know what? You're not too far. It's 41 goals and 55 assists.
55
So
assists.
you were number 2 overall in actually all of the slots there. Only one player beat you out with 44 goals, 64 assists, and 108 points combined. Len Meyer. Yeah. You're right at the top of the list. And what grabbed me is I was looking at that when we were talking to Jeff, and what got me was not only your name, because I'd heard your name forever.
Yeah. I've been
Dad has talked about a few players ad nauseum throughout my life, and you are one of them. I was real little. I don't really remember you. I'm sure there's probably photos in a photo album somewhere.
Yeah,
where you and I are both sitting in the, especially in that house in Victoria. But I was little. I don't remember a whole lot from that time, except for maybe being run over at a practice one day by somebody that may or may not have been a previous guest of this show, but we don't talk about that. But it's one of those things where, as I'm learning all of this and I'm going back and looking at this, it is fascinating to see how this all came together. I mean, 15 years old, that's at 15 years old and quite far away from home. That's now, how was that transition for you? Because I'm sure there's some kids out there listening to this that are looking at that sort of, well, my next step is I'm gonna have to leave town, and you left at a really young age for that. I mean, it was probably bare minimum to leave home, even for this day and age at 15. So what was that like, picking up, moving to a whole other province, let alone also going down to the States for a few days?
Well, you know what, Matt? It was actually double-edged. To achieve what I wanted to achieve, I knew that I would have to do that. So that probably was in my head more than leaving home. I knew I had to leave home. But having said that, coming from a large family and being of Aboriginal descent and so on, like homesickness does play a factor in it. And to what extent or level, I guess that varies from person to person. But for me, I was homesick pretty bad at times. I can't, you don't talk about that stuff much. I remember even after that going on to Prince Albert, because maybe now it might have been catching up with me. That was my next junior team. Like it got kind of really bad there when I was there, because now when I was there, that was my third and say fourth year of being away from home. You think it would get better, but in some instances it kind of got worse. So that played with me a little bit. Being a young man, you still got to remember I was still only when I was with Doug, I'm 15 and 16, And then now I'm still only 17 and 18, which, you know, that's you're not that old really when you think about it. So that did factor in it. Um, I remember having conversations with my parents, my mom in particular, about that. And like I was, not too many people know this story, but I was close to quitting. I was close to leaving the team and going back home, which happens when I look at it in cases throughout indigenous culture. I see a lot of the kids coming off the reserves and coming out. But homesickness is, that might be something that should be addressed more, um, especially from our side of things. And not only from our side, I'm sure that a lot of players must go through that. So it played a big role, actually, a big role in the sense of it affected me. But my mom really told me, just keep going, give it another day, keep going. And she was right. Just keep going. You know, eventually it wore off. Let's just say it wore off. But for those times when it was tough, it was really tough for being a young guy.
No, I can imagine. And when we were talking with Jeff, we were talking a little bit about the mental health aspect of that. For him, the homesickness didn't really come into it, but because of your age and Fort Mac is not a quick drive from Vancouver Island, let alone Spokane. So that really stood out to me. And it occurred to me that there's a lot of kids that have to make this decision. And we're discussing last week on the show sort of the trials and tribulations of the beginning of the hockey season and trying for that rep team and moving up to the next level, and where the mental blocks, the disappointment of one thing or another, be it an injury, be it not making the team, being, last cut, first cut, whatever it is a problem. And I don't think a lot of people really take homesickness into account. And that really stood out looking at your stats. So your parents were fairly supportive of that then.
His
It
mom was
sounds
the
like.
best.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay. So his
Matt,
mom
his mom was the best. I talked to her quite a bit because we knew he was homesick.
Mhm.
Had a pretty good idea. There were a couple of other kids there that were, but you know what? His mom said, "Well, he'll bite the bullet." She had so much faith and belief in his ability to be able to certainly handle it at our level. I have nothing but admiration. I know when it got really bad, she'd make a run out to visit. She came out more than once that year, I believe. Did she not, Dan?
Yeah, for sure
Yeah, and
they
that
did.
was all to to support him, to give him the strength because it's a for me. I mean, I've seen it so many times over so many years, even before doing college, and that's a huge mental strength, and it's even a physical strength. Like physically, that mentalness can make you sick,
Mhm.
and it can make you. I know a lot of kids stop performing, and then coaches begin to question their abilities. And you know what? Dan never lacked in his effort to put his best ability on the ice. And I thank his mom so much for her support to him. But yeah, no, Danny, I said this before we talked today. Your mom was aces.
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
Now
yeah.
I'm looking at this player list, and you had two other players that came from farther. You had a couple of Ontario residents, Al Gooding and Jeff Hepburn, that came out, but they were both 19 and 20.
Mhm.
So the thing that really stands out about Danny's position is he's 15, which means he's not just going to play hockey. He's got to fit into a new high school. He's, as we discussed last week, talking about the way sort of the hockey tryouts and everything are also overlap the top of the school year. You have that going on. You have school going on. You have hockey trials going on, and you're 15 years old. Your hormones are just jam packed to the rafters on top of all of that. It's a tough it's a tough thing to stack all of that stuff on top of a 15-year-old kid and then move him several hundred kilometers away from home.
Listen to
So
this
it's
one, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you are bang on. So listen to this. I'm 15. I just moved from Alberta, where 15, we just start senior high school, grade 10, 11, 12, right? So we start grade 10, 11, 12. So now I moved to Cowichan. First of all, I'm trying to fit in with 18, 19, 20-year-old young men as a 15-year-old. Okay, that's this hurdle I'm trying to adapt to, trying to see who's who and what's what and what's going on, keep my mouth shut and paying
Mhm.
attention. And so I remember I remember getting ready for school, and our high school was right across the street. And I'm going, okay, right on. Okay, high school, here we go. Yep, okay. All the guys are getting ready to go to this high school, and I'm ready to go to this high school. And it's like, no, Danny, you got to come with me. And I'm like, what do you mean I got to go with you? Why can't I go with all my other teammates here? No, no, no. They're going to high school. You're still going to secondary school over here, Lake Quamaton. So I had to go to this secondary school all by myself
Yep.
while my teammates were at high school right across the rink. And I'm
Yeah,
like, well, this is great.
yeah,
Now I'm
because it's
15 all by myself at this school over here I don't know a soul. So that was interesting too.
yeah, because I mean, even up until the '90s when I was doing it, it was junior high school was 8, 9, 10, and then we went for 11, 12 in a separate building or up the road. So
Exactly. Yeah, I
that
didn't have
had
a
to
clue
be
about
a
that.
huge curveball. Um, and it looks like they had Darren Dirtle from Gimli, Manitoba is listed here, but he's got no stats, so I don't know if he was. It doesn't even say how many games he had played, so I don't know exactly if either of you remember him. But he looked like the other 15-year-old on the team. Um, I
I
literally there's
remember
no
Darren
stats
well.
available. Yeah,
He was pretty good and a great teammate actually.
right. So was he in the same sort of predicament you are? Was it the two of you in that school, or
No,
was he? Yeah,
no,
no.
no, 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 no. Nobody I knew there was. I was the only
Oh
one
wow.
in that uh, case there. So it was
Oh.
really that was really strange. It was really strange, but I don't know. Once you get into it and get used to it, being the only guy over there, it I don't know. Kind of got used to it. Made friends. Made
Mhm.
different friends, which might have helped because I'm sure if I would have been at the high school, I would probably, like a lot of us do, just hang around with our teammates and stuff, right?
Mhm.
And
Now
I
that's
have friends there. Actually, one of my good friends to this day is from Cowichan Valley, Danny Baker, who was a great pole vaulter, one of Canada's best pole vaulters, and he's still a great friend of mine. He's actually one of my longest standing friends. So something good
that's
came out of all that too, I guess.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's great to have those, especially if it's not. I mean, teammates are one thing because they seem to always hold that special place, especially if you get to reconnect. Um, now, how are the guys with you? Because your name came up when we were talking to Jeff in the pre-show for sure, and he was really happy to have had a recent conversation with you. It sounded a lot like I know. Did you find that some of the guys were really taking you under their wing when you were out there? Some of the locals, like it sounded like Jeff was a big sort of factor in your time out there as well. I'm just picking up on
Yep.
multiple stories, so correct me if I'm wrong. But did you find that the guys were really sort of embracing the kid that had to come in from out of town, help the young kid out? And
Oh, guaranteed. Everybody there in well, everybody, your dad included, coaching staff, like everybody. I felt welcome. I felt close knit. I felt all of that. We had good. You know what constitutes a part of a good winning team is from all the teams I've been on in my life, winning teams, and I've seen the other side of it too. I'm sure your father has the losing teams. Winning teams are for me more close knit, more caring of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that in Cowichan my first 2 years. Like we were guys from all over, like you said, like we really were. A lot of the guys from the island maybe might have knew of each other, but now they're getting to know each other also. But that's one thing I really like. We spent a lot of time together, actually. Like during lunch breaks from school and stuff. I don't know, Doug, if you remember this. We'd spend a lot of time in that bowling alley over there. The older guys, the younger guys, like everybody. It didn't matter to build this chemistry, and the chemistry carried on to the ice too. You could see that because we cared about each other on and off the ice, but I never felt anything except welcome by everybody, teammates, everyone there. I I was going to touch on that too, Doug. It's something you might not know of or never thought about, but you know how hockey teams have hazing for the rookies and all that stuff, that nonsense, that BS that I don't believe in. But I was fortunate to come to Cowichan, which was a slash expansion team, right, Doug?
Yep.
In the
Right.
BCJHL. And after I finished my 2 years there, so I didn't have to deal in any of that stuff. We were all coming in relatively on even terms. There was nobody there with hierarchy or any of that stuff where, I'm a Cowichan Capital, now you guys are, no, none of that. And then from there, I went to the Prince Albert Raiders, who just got their WHL first year existence also. So I walked into that same atmosphere from there, where everybody starts basically on the same level. So there was none of that hazing, hierarchy. This is the way it is, and sort of like the players on the team, boss and other players around. Everybody was on the same wavelength, same footing. So, and I think that might have played a lot into it too, where we all looked at each other as equals. It didn't matter age or where you were from or any of that stuff. So that might have all had something to do with it too.
Yeah,
So that was
that's
interesting.
Mike,
to me that's something about a solid team, because if you look at the Cowichan Valley stats, and we went over this a couple episodes ago, they had 2 really good years, and then they had 2 really bad years and moved cities. The first 2 years went really well. As Dad and I discussed in a previous episode, it's one of those teams that has, when you look at it on paper, it's an expansion team. It's their first year. They have all these players, yada, yada, yada. There's no reason on paper it should do well at all. And yet, you guys did. You only lost 13 games that year. You had an incredible first 2 seasons, and things happened. Coaching staff moved on, players moved on, and they ended up doing 2 more years and out the door. Now, speaking of the Prince Albert Raiders, for those of you that don't know, Dan, would you like to explain the upcoming event this November?
Oh, for sure. I'm fortunate enough to be to having my number 16, my sweater, retired in Prince Albert, coming up on November 28th. I just got the call this summer from Curtis Hunt, the general manager, who's a good ex-teammate of mine there in Prince Albert, to give me the news about that. So I'm quite honored and humbled and all that to have that coming up.
That has to be an absolutely spectacular sort of career highlight, just to get that sort of recognition. We seem to have lost Doug.
Where's Doug
But
gone
we'll I yeah, it's not the first time I've lost him. This is why we have one of those teddy bear backpacks with the leash on it when we take him out in public.
Yeah. And that little
so,
microchip at the bottom.
Yo, let me tell you, if I get him one of those tattoos from the vet, I tried, but they're like, no,
Can't do it.
only
To
4-legged things, please. And I can get away with this because he's not going to listen to it in post. So, what was there? Was there some lessons you learned at 15? You're coming out. You're now just in a completely alien environment, for lack of a better term. Was there something you really learned that year that helped you sort of pick it up and keep going?
Um, well, at 15, Matt, I'm thinking, okay, this is my career path. This is what I want to do. That I want to play hockey. So I was really, uh, I was really concentrating just on getting better as an individual player, using practice time wisely and so on. But also in the team aspect of the game, which it is, and which is highly important to me, wanting to win and learning how to win and things like that. Like winning just doesn't come easy at any level,
Mm-hmm.
but but at that age, I'm just starting out my junior career and being only 15. So you're still I've only had maybe 6, 7, 8 years into it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when you play Bantam and or I never played midget, but Pee Wee Bantam, and so you're just getting into it. But yeah, no, I learned a lot from those years. From our trip over to Czechoslovakia to play on that ice and to play in different culture and see all that. That was a real eye opener, and and the level of talent that we had in Cowichan that you were touching on there. Like, I think we had 4 guys to go on to play in the NHL from
You
that team,
absolutely did.
right? So like these are good. Like we're talking about Jeff. Jeff was my left winger, so learning a lot from him and maybe helping him a lot and in certain ways and learning. I think to learn not only on the ice stuff, but like Jeff and I became very, very close friends in those years. We spent a lot of time together, and I think that helped carry over from off the ice onto the ice when you're very close and personal and you know a lot about the other person and so on. And so you start to learn um, valuable uh, like stuff like that. Like so basically, ever since then, I've always made it habit to really get to know my not well line mates in particular, my wingers in particular, like very much right to the bone, but to know my teammates very well, also to know what makes them tick, what doesn't make them tick. And I think that starting to learn that in Cowichan and then carrying it over right through the rest of my junior career and on to pro, uh, that those were valuable like little tools in a toolbox to carry on.
No, absolutely. Now you touched on the Czechoslovakia trip. Now, to the best of my knowledge, and he's working his way back into here. We've sort of sorted it out. We will see him pop up. Dad went twice.
Yeah,
One time, the last time, turned out with a bit of controversy when one of the guys ended up in jail. We'll get into that one a little further down the down the list in the podcast history because I'm still piecing together how I want to do that. What was that first trip for you like? Because you would have been 15, 16 years old, and now you're not just in another province on
yeah,
it's a big island, but on an island. Now you are halfway across the world
yeah,
from a little town in
yeah,
medium-sized town in Alberta. You're behind the Iron Curtain.
yeah.
So what was that like for you?
Well, honestly, I remember standing right downtown Prague by myself before one of the games and just looking around and trying to soak everything in. And I remember how gray everything was and all this and that and the other thing. But I remember saying kind of to myself, this is a part of of your journey. This is a big part of your hockey journey and your life journey. And to I remember kind of like speaking to myself as I said, like look around, soak this in because these are the things that are going to shape you and like everything that you're going to go through, like all the places that you're going to see and want to see. because that was a big thing for me to really get out and see things and experience things, because that's going to be your growth. And so I recall that trip of just thinking, okay, here's like, for me it was like the start, because I was only 15, as you said, and I planned on having a career. And maybe, who knows, the 20-year-olds might have looked at it differently. I don't know how they looked at it.
Well, I mean, it's the early 80s, and that had to be just a fascinating thing to go behind the Iron Curtain to play in a country that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, Prague is obviously still there. The Czech Republic is still there, but you guys didn't go to the Czech Republic. You went to Czechoslovakia.
Right,
So,
right.
I mean, that in itself really dates it. Um, Now, the legend has it, and there may be a china cabinet somewhere in Williams Lake with evidence. The hockey sticks were quite valuable to the fans over there, to the point where they were giving away their own crystal dishware. Do you remember any of that?
Yes, I recall some of that going on. I wasn't a part of it or anything, but I heard some rumblings, some rumors going around the bus about what might have been going on there. Well,
Yeah.
blue jeans were valuable too.
Oh, you know what? And that's something I hadn't thought of until right now, because as I've already said 3 times, this is Soviet era Czechoslovakia. So I would imagine there was a lot of things back there that you guys would consider just, yeah, it just, I went to the mall and picked this up, not thinking about
Yeah,
it, and they're like, "Oh my
yeah,
God, you have these
yeah.
hockey sticks, blue jeans." I would imagine even cassette tapes of current music would have been. So was there any sort of culture shock with that, or did you get to interact much? Because
Yeah, no, there was culture shock big time. I mean, you said it before there, Matt. Like this, we're talking Czechoslovakia. We're talking Iron Curtain stuff. We're talking, like, this is still a little bit on the hardcore side of back then, where relations with the States and Russia, relations aren't that good. That was the year of Miracle on
Mhm.
Ice in Lake Placid, and it wasn't that good. So in a sense, we could, like, we had a feeling of, we better be careful here. And this might touch on your dad's next
Mhm.
Czechoslovakian story, but I mean, we were like told to be very careful. We don't know who's watching us, and what eyes are on us, if our rooms are bugged, or for this, that, the other thing, almost like cloak and dagger stuff. So
Mhm.
we were aware, like, even me as a 15-year-old, I was aware of that stuff, being, you know and so we were very careful not to, to do anything wrong. And because if you get picked up there, I was 15, so the last thing I wanted to do was get picked up by the Czechoslovakian police, or like the KGB's Russian. I don't know what you'd call it in Czechoslovakia, but
I
whatever it was, I didn't
Yep.
want any part of it.
No, understandable. I mean, I'm a huge wrestling fan, and there is a legendary trip where a bunch of pro wrestlers in a major company did a trip to North Korea, and they found out one of them who, um, I believe it was one of the Road Warriors. So, well over 6 feet tall, gassed to the gills, just all meat and bad attitude. Got Oh no, it wasn't. It was Scott Norton. Anyways, this guy's a world championship arm wrestler. Was talking to his wife, and his wife was upset that he hadn't called her yet. And he's like, I don't know what's going on over here. There's this, that, and the other. But they did have his phone bug, so he had to hang up because there was a knock at the door, and he got dragged downstairs by the North Korean
Oh,
um,
see,
authorities and had
yeah,
a discussion.
yeah,
So, I mean, I can imagine that all of that stuff is quite prevalent in everybody's mind. And dad has some stories about this. We're still having a little bit of difficulty getting him back here, but
yeah.
so you did really well in Prince Albert. You I mean, you put up a lot of points in there. It's you're 130, 181, 182 points in your 3 seasons there. So no wonder they're retiring your number. I mean, hockey in the 80s had some advantages. But then you moved on to the AHL. It looks like you sort of split 85, 86 between the St. Catharines Saints and the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
How was that transition for you? Because now you just seem to be getting further and further away from this small northern Alberta town.
Right. That was great. I mean, that was the realization of all this stuff of these 5 years of junior. So that was great to finally have reached my goal per se, as far as making it to the NHL. So I was quite, how do you say, I was happy with the progress I was making. I was happy where I was at that time. But then it was just kind of fortunate how things started off in Toronto for me with my broken nose and cheekbone in the preseason, which led to like a couple of months, like missing the start of the season by a couple of months, and then almost maybe not really even getting back on track. Like I started being off track, and then it never really got on track. Not with what I was used to anyway. Like playing in junior, where things were on track, but it never really seemed to feel that way my first year in Toronto, or maybe even my following years in Vancouver for whatever reasons, as I went on to play there too. But then I ended
Mhm.
up breaking my leg there after just getting called up from Fredericton, where I had 26 points, I believe, in 13 games. I was leading the league.
Yep.
And then I had, I had 10 points in 4 games. I had a goal my first game, goal and assist second, goal and assist my third. And then Mario Lemieux in Pittsburgh came to town, and I got a goal and 4 assists that game. So I had 10 points in 4 games. And, Danny Hodgson has arrived, this big shooter out of junior. And I was feeling really good about my game, like really, really good. Like, okay, I find, like, because I was 23 years old then at this time. So I thought, okay, we can do this now. And then, unfortunately, again, fate had something else in store for me,
Mhm.
I guess. And then that's when I ended up breaking my leg against Calgary. And then that was it, missing the rest of that season. So things were kind of a little, they weren't really, really firm for those first 3 years joining the NHL.
Right. Now, and that's another thing about your career that I had noticed that I think would really go well for a lot of kids out there to consider is the NHL didn't work out ideally for you, to
Yeah,
say the least. And you clearly agree. However, that wasn't the end of your career.
right.
It looks like you started 89 playing in Austria.
Nope,
And no,
nope. I ended
no,
it in Austria.
you ended it in Austria. Okay. So you moved to Europe for the 80, looks like 89-90 season in Austria.
Nope. I well, how that works, Matt, is I played my full season in Switzerland.
Okay.
And how that works is other teams from other countries, like I was tagged as an import. An import is like you're allowed 2 imports at that time on each team. So there was a team in Austria who was going into their playouts, which is over there they have relegation rounds. So they have best of threes to see who goes down. And if they're not happy with their imports, let's say they're not happy with Danny, they're going to go sign Matt to come in and play these 2 games. So maybe that's where a little of the confusion lays there. I just went to them for this one playout round at the end of my season. So I only have to go there. That's why you only see 2 games on there. It was a best of 3, and then that was it.
Okay. So, first off, I had to
Yeah.
take that emergency call there. It looks like the power's gone out in Williams Lake, so we won't be getting Doug back.
We're going to lose that.
We're gonna be giving it back, but you know what? Hopefully, you could come back and talk with us for a little bit. But I still have a few more questions. Here's here's the big thing about this is I think a lot of kids in North America, in Canada specifically, they have their sights laser set. It's the NHL. It's the NHL. It's the NHL. You had what looks like 15 seasons in Europe,
16.
16 seasons in Europe. So, and that is not I'm going over to play for fun. That's professional paid hockey, correct?
That is totally correct. It's totally very big over there, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So I see. I mean, it looks like you spent a lot of time in Zurich and Davos.
Yeah,
What do you find the differences there? Because I mean, you look and you hear sort of things, and I'm not a player. I didn't play.
yeah,
That would have been my brother. It wasn't my thing. But you heard a
yeah,
lot the difference between the Canadian or the North American game and the European game. Did you
yeah.
have any sort of, I guess, for the lack of a better term, culture shock in the way they played the game when you got there?
No, no, not at all. Actually, their game over there, excuse me, fit my style of play very well. It's faster game. The ice is bigger. There's less hitting because of the ice being bigger uh, and the game being faster. Say there's no fighting per se in that league,
Mm-hmm.
so everything about it kind of fit my game uh, way better than a North American game. Like you have clutching back in the 80s, you know, if you remember the clutching grabbing that was
Yep.
clutching and grabbing that was going on from player to player, let alone, you know, big defensemen who slash couldn't skate that well, but they could play defense and fight maybe and stuff like that. They would never have a player like that over there. Almost everybody could skate and play. So for me, it was a good fit for the way I played. It was great. But back to what you said there, culture shock. But so now I'm living in Europe, where just a month before or 2 months before, I didn't even know where Switzerland was, and until I signed over there. And so now you're heading into another. Well, you remember what I just said about being in Prague and like looking around and saying,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is going to be start of it. So you're going city to city in Canada now. You're going overseas, and now I'm living in Switzerland, and the city I lived in was half French speaking and half German speaking. So now you're listening to different languages all the time, and yeah, it was the start of another big long chapter in my life.
Okay, now there's there, and I from having gone on enough vacations down in the states, a lot of people figure that just if you're living in Canada, if you're a Canadian citizen, you know both French and English. Not the case. I couldn't speak French if I didn't read it on the back of a cereal box. Did you have
Yeah.
any extra languages going into that, or were you completely
Yeah,
on the
no,
uptake after there?
I was in French classes probably like everybody else in say grade 7 and 8, but then failed miserably at it. And then first chance I
Yep.
had not to take them, I didn't take them, which I kicked myself in the butt for, just for the plain fact of the at 24 years old, the city I'm living in is all French speaking, or like I said, half of it fully French speaking anyway. And I sure could have used that language over there. So I ended up marrying a Swiss girl, and her language is German. So eventually, and also my second year, I went to play in Munich, Germany for 2 years. So that
Mm-hmm.
really helped with my German, and I picked up on German living in Munich, so that came along and helped me out very well. So as it turned out, Matt, I speak fluent German and a little bit of French. I picked up a little bit of French on the way because the cities I mainly played in over in Europe, I never really played on the French side. A lot of the teams I played on were on the German speaking side.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why my German was picked up on really well.
That's fantastic. That was leading right to my next question is did you come back with a language? So I mean it's not too late to learn these things. I say this
No,
to myself as well because I did the same thing you did. I don't have to take French no more. Thank you. No, you
right?
got to do one more.
Yeah,
You got to pass
yeah,
one more language credit to so I took Spanish and it took me 3
Right.
tries, but I got through it.
Yeah.
I might be able to find the bathroom and order a cocktail if I'm in Mexico, but that's about
Yeah.
where I'm
Yeah.
at.
Right. Yeah.
Um, now, did you find? So you said there was each team was allowed 2 imports. Did any bonding with any more off-continent players when you were doing that?
Well, it was kind of cool actually. My winger, my first year in Switzerland was Anton Stasny, which he just came from. I believe he came from Quebec with his brothers Marion and Peter. So he was a great guy to play with. Very intense, very skilled. So we had a great connection there. But as far as the imports go, they're from all over the world: Finland,
Mhm.
Sweden, Czech, Russia, Canadian, American. So you develop a bond with them like automatically because you're imports for one, and you kind of you stick together. You're not how do you say you are different from the main team a little bit, somewhat because of import status. You're expected more to do more than the other players, play better, and then get your
Mhm.
points and that sort of thing. But yeah, no. You create great bonds with these guys too, and I'm still friends with a lot of them to this day, for sure.
Did you find that much like showing up in Cowichan at 15, did you find that there was that same sort of we're going to help this kid out when you get there, or was it a little more combative? What was that sort of like being the new kid on the continent at this time rather than the new kid in the province? Is there any overlap there? Was there some major
Yeah,
differences?
yeah. No. It's a good question because no, there. It's funny how life works like that, right? Like I'm a 15-year-old getting ready for that, and all the stuff that I kind of got ready for and already did as a 15-year-old, it's helping me adapt over in Switzerland as a 24-year-old. Similarities and the change in environment and adapting into a new culture, a new way, and also the as I said before about being in couch and how close knit and welcoming everybody was. When you're an import over there, the team is very welcoming of you because you're looked at in a different manner. As you're looked at as a leader and a point getter. So you're at another level, and so how they treat you is very special. It's uh, like they want you to do well, they want the team to do well, and you want to do well too individually. So it's there's a lot of similarities in it actually when you look at it, and it's so
That's
going through that in Cowichan, it's very similar as what I went through as like I said, the 24-year-old over in Switzerland.
right now. Was there homesickness with this as well? Because I mean, again, you're across the world. Did you find that homesickness returned, or had you learned to deal with it?
Well, you know what, it was there again to an extent, a different feeling now because now you're 24 years old, you're a man, still a young man in that
Hmm.
relative sense, but the homesickness was there again because you don't have any friends over there. You're by yourself a lot. If you're lucky enough to have Canadians on the team, which I was lucky enough to have one other Canadian on the team who uh, I could hang around with every now and then. But you find back to that, you got to adapt. You got to do different things and learn different things. And but yeah, no, there's a lot of phone calls to home. Let me put it
Hmm.
like that, Matt, for
Oh, I
sure.
I believe it, and I mean, I'm looking at these years, and those were not cheap phone calls easy
No,
either.
yeah, good man. Those
Yeah,
weren't cheap phone calls, no, and those were
yeah,
some pretty solid landlines.
yeah. That's fantastic. Now, did you spend a lot of off-season time there as well? I mean, you mentioned you got married over there. So were you spending years at a time over there and coming back to visit? Were you coming home in the off season? How did that look?
Yeah, no, Matt, I'm always proud to say I came home every summer. I'm very proud to say that because back to being homesick. Well, I miss my family. I come from a large family. I miss my family a lot. I miss my friends a lot. And it meant a lot to me because time was valuable at that point. And I only had maybe X amount of months in the off season to be able to come home. I never came home for that extended length, but if I came home for a month, that I thought that was great to be able to see family, my parents, and uh, brothers and sisters and close friends, because that really meant a lot to me. Because you spend your whole life. You look at it. I look at it now, and I left home at 15. So how much time did I actually get to spend with my mom and dad and
Right.
family? I spent more time probably on the telephone to them than actually in person. So I made a point of it to come back home. It was important to me.
No, that's great. I mean, and you left Fort McMurray and you came back to Fort McMurray. You
That's
know,
right.
that's so you came full circle. I guess the family's glad to have you back.
Yeah.
Was there anything in your downtime over there? Was there a lot of sightseeing time? You could go out and knock a few things off the bucket list there, or was it all pretty much game to game to game?
No, no, no. There was plenty of downtime over there because the schedule was amazing. We only played 36 games a year when I first got over there. So basically, we played Tuesdays and Saturdays with Sunday off, and the other days were practice days. So, no, we
Mm-hmm.
had plenty of time, and I had plenty of time to just jump in my car and tour around Switzerland or go to Italy or go to France or wherever it may be that you had time to go to and check things out. So, no, it was really cool like that. Like coming from an 80 game NHL schedule to 36 is it's kind it was almost like you felt like you were practicing too much over there,
Yeah,
not playing
you,
enough.
you're in
So
the
it was
luxury
great.
league now, and I think
Yeah,
that's
that's right.
that's something I think a lot of kids who are laser focused on the NHL probably don't realize till you get over there. Once they get through the culture shock, it's like, okay, well, I got some downtime, but I can now drive to Venice. I can drive
Yeah,
to Paris. I
yeah,
can, I
yeah,
think there is a big upside where if you can get that sort of a gig, it might be one of the better life experiences because you are now in the center of a lot of history, a lot of major cities. And yes, there's lots of major cities in North America as well. They're not as easy to get to unless you're in the Northeast United States where there's a
right.
lot clustered. But it's you can't play a game in LA and go, well, I got 2 days off. I would like to see South Beach, Miami. Well, that ain't gonna happen
Yeah,
unless your next
yeah,
game is in Miami, right?
yeah. That's right.
So,
Ain't happening. Yeah, because you look at
so
the size of Switzerland's really small, right? It's
mhm,
like maybe 400 kilometers wide by maybe 250 north south relative, something like that. So yeah, you can literally touch four countries in one day if you wanted to. So getting around over there, like you said, is not a problem at all, and used wisely and use it to your advantage, which I think I did a little bit. Yes, it's very. You get to see the world. It's like a paid holiday in some sense. Well, you're playing hockey
mhm,
professionally, so it's not like that, but it you can say a little bit of it is.
yeah. But I mean, it as far as work goes, having to go to the rink and put on the gear well, it can be stressful. And I don't want to say that, but at the same time, you get to play a game for a living.
Yeah, yeah,
And so there is that level of maybe not when you're in some of these pressure situations because they definitely exist, but
yeah,
at the same time, you're not putting on coveralls and punching a clock and
yeah.
hoping you can get out in time to go and do this. So, I mean, that sounds
That's
like a
right.
fantastic experience. Maybe
Yeah.
you can come back and tell us a little bit more about that, but we're just about at an hour. Thank you so much for coming to do this.
Thanks a
I
lot,
know
Matt.
Dad is really over the years has used your name a lot in examples and stories. You and Jeff both.
Yeah.
I thought it was incredibly coincidental that in talking with Jeff, you'd be like, I just talked to Danny.
Yeah.
Just talked to him
Yeah.
last week. So
Yeah.
the fact that this has all sort of come together, really great seeing you. I want to say again, but again, I was like 4, so I don't really remember much. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming and chatting. Hopefully
Hey,
you can,
for whatever
it was
it's worth,
okay with you and you
you
can
were
come
a
back
good
and
little
talk with us
kid.
again. Yeah.
All right.
But now I'm old and my kids are graduating, so there's one more bit of culture shock for you.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Thank you so much, Danny. I really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Matt. Thanks a lot.